Welcome to Arrange It Right. We're talking about creativity, credit, and classroom copyright today. This is our very first of our Copyright Unlocked series where we are going to explore all the different concepts within our new CR2.2 objectives. These objectives are similar. They are aligned in every single grade level, no matter what content you teach. So that means even if you're a theater teacher who has a theater program that doesn't start until high school, your students will still get exposure to these concepts from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade in music and visual arts and or dance if they have access to those programs in their K-8 continuum. So today we're going to pretty much focus exclusively on music and the way that music shows up in our programs. But that isn't to say that this doesn't apply to, the musical use of the use of music in dance programs and in theatrical programs as well. I just wanted to give a little shout out first to the fact that we were enjoying some royalty-free music from bensound.com. If you had never experienced their website or any of the other royalty-free music, definitely go check them out. So my name is Brandon Rader. I am the music and theater arts consultant from the Department of Public Instruction, and my incomparable colleague is Dr. Laura Stotterman. She is the dance and visual arts consultant, and we are led by former theater teacher Dr. Lori Major Carlin. So we're very blessed to have a full arts team here at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Again, this is our very first webinar of a whole series. So we actually had our first installment of this series at the Comprehensive Arts Education Conference, also known as CAKE. And so if you're interested in checking out that panel, it's already in the archive and you can click on this button here to the right. Also, if you're interested in learning more about theatrical productions and plays and the way that CR2.2 shows up in those classes, also great for ELA teachers. You can join us next Tuesday on October 28th from 4 to 5. Eric Grapatin, who is the licensing specialist at Music Theater International, will be joining us. We also, for everyone, I really want to encourage everyone to show up to Lesson Launch, which is our webinar with copyright and creativity. A lot of the other webinars will sort of talk about things conceptually, but copyright and creativity's whole mission is to create lesson plans and resources for using with students. So they are reorganizing their entire library to share with us so that it's aligned to our standards. And so I'm really excited about having them come out on November 18th. We're also looking forward to scheduling both SWANK and the Art of Education University. All right, so in order for everyone to receive CEU credit for this session, we want to ensure that everybody gets a copy of this reflection journal. I'm dropping the link into the chat right now. And when or you can scan the QR code, and this link will take you to a template preview of a force copy. So it's just like the regular force copy in Google Docs, except it actually lets you know what you are, get a sneak preview of what it is that you're actually going to be force copying. When you are either following along today or watching the recording, you can fill in your reflection journal and then submit it with your CEU survey at the very end to receive your CEU certificate. Please let us know in the chat if you're having any sort of technical difficulty with accessing that reflection journal. And the very first thing that we're going to be doing in that reflection journal is this welcoming activity. So we have 6 different concepts. I'm calling them conceptual bins inside the CR2.2. And they are the ideas of originality versus copying, legal and ethical sharing, attribution and credit, building our vocabulary around copyright and ethics, complex uses like parody and AI, and the ethical use of another's artwork. So as you are coming in today, And you can drop this either in the chat or in your reflection journal if you'd like. Which of these concepts do you anticipate needing the most support with today? Where is your strongest area of growth? I know for me, I think the idea of ethical use of where that line is where I have grown the most as we've unpacked these standards. I'll give you just a few minutes to fill out your reflection journal and or drop it into the chat. Y'all, I did not even realize that I was on the wrong slide. You missed all of the beautiful slides. I'm so sorry about that. So, is our copyright unlocked series with the beautiful images, and you can click on those. I'm so sorry that I missed that. And here's the reflection journal, but I dropped it into the chat as well. And then here's the welcoming activity. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about these conceptual bins. The originality versus copying, really what we're focusing with our youngest students is what does it mean and when is it okay to copy? Because sometimes we say, copy exactly what I'm doing. The first time that I teach my students how to draw a quarter note, I want them to draw it exactly the way that I'm drawing it. Same thing with a treble clef. Same thing when I'm writing our first couple rhythms. But then eventually we want them to understand the difference between when it's their turn to create something original. Legal and ethical sharing, we see show up multiple times in second, fourth, and eighth grade. And that's really understanding what kind of boundary there is for how much can we use and when can we use it. Attribution and credit shows up again multiple times. How do we give proper credit? How do we get permission? Building that copyright vocabulary happens in sixth grade and in beginning because we know those are natural entry points into our programs. Complex use cases is reserved for our first inherently honors level, which of course is accomplished. And ethical evaluation, again, shows up periodically in third grade, seventh grade, and intermediate. And we did these on purpose so that students, no matter when they came into programs, would sort of get a holistic view of all of the conceptual bins. All right. If you're looking to learn more about these conceptual bins, you can check out the one pager, which is pretty sweet, if I may say so myself. Of course, I keep trying to drop it into the chat, but it is not working. Let's see. There we go. And so you can come back to this at your own time to really see what the language is for each of those objectives. All right, so today we're going to let's dive into it. We're going to welcome James from Alfred Music here, and then we're going to talk about why copyright matters, when it applies, why we should get permission, and then how we get permission before closing out today. The idea in this session is to help us as practitioners to set great examples for our students, but also how to talk with our students about when we are approaching copyright and ethical boundaries. All right, James, please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Brandon. I'm very happy to be here with you all this afternoon. My name is James Grubenhoff. I'm the Senior Licensing Director at Alfred Music. I have a music business degree from the University of Miami in Florida, where I studied under the venerable Dr. Alfred Reed. And I've been working in music publishing now for 35 years, including the last 20 years with Alfred Music, which, as you may know, has been a sheet music publisher and publisher of educational music since 1922. I'm happy to be here to help try and eliminate some misconceptions about custom arrangements and fair use and copyright. And hopefully, when we're done here, I can help you to make your job a little easier.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to it. Okay. So, James, I know this is a big conversation, but why does copyright matter?
Yeah, so this is a basic underlying question that comes up a lot, uh, and I think to a great extent people you know have a feeling that a song is some type of ethereal thing, that it's not in a fixed form in most cases, and it's hard to understand why this can be treated as a piece of property. And in my opinion, especially if you're trying to convey this concept to young people, I think you do need to speak about it in a way that's similar to a physical piece of property. One example I've heard on a number of occasions is you wouldn't borrow someone's car without permission, and you shouldn't use someone's song without permission. Um, Certainly the underlying principle is that it's against the law to um, use copyrighted music in certain ways without permission. And we certainly want to, underscore the importance of being in compliance with the law in that regard. Um, I think this also speaks to some extent to the moral right of the author and the creator to control the way that their work is published and presented in the world. Um, and that goes right along with the other concepts.
Awesome. That's great. That's a good overview. All right, so let's dive into an example that illustrates why it matters. So, if an ensemble only has 40 copies of a score, but they need 45 parts for their upcoming performance, can the director just simply photocopy those extra 5 parts instead of purchasing another set?
When that type of thing happens, wow. No, yeah, I've heard this scenario. I've been on the floor at TMEA or North Carolina Music Educators, and that same question has been posed 1,000 times. Boy, my trombone section, if their nose wasn't attached, they would lose that too, and their parts, forget about it.
For sure.
3 or 4 times in the same semester, having to do this. And technically, yes, you do need permission for this. Of course, if you're in a rehearsal or a performance situation and you've got 5 minutes and you need to, make this happen, I don't think anybody's going to come after you for that. But technically, when you create or photocopy individual instrument parts or score pages of an arrangement of copyrighted music, you should get permission. Here at Alfred, we field requests for this type of permission all the time, and it's very reasonable in terms of the cost. Anything under 5 copies is gratis automatically. So in that situation, it's just a matter of going through that step. And I want to encourage everybody to not be shy about reaching out to us via our licensing portal, and not be intimidated that it's going to take a long time or it's going to be a hassle. Now, when you submit a request via our licensing portal, you're going to get an email back that tells you that we generally resolve all requests within 45 days. But the fact is that it's much faster than that, and you shouldn't be hesitant to contact us because of time concerns. Certainly, if you've got something where you're going to need to be out on the field for a contest somewhere where you're going to be asked to prove that you have legally purchased music, you're going to want to give us as much lead time as possible in that scenario. But again, for something simple like this, making photocopies of a score or parts, those types of requests we resolve on a routine basis continually, and you should be able to secure that permission and get a written record of it within a reasonable period of time.
Awesome. So we have two caveats here. How does that change if it's a digital edition that I purchased?
Well, when you purchase a digital edition, generally that purchase comes along with the ability to print a certain number of parts. And once you've exhausted that, then it's treated the same fashion as a physical copy.
Awesome. And what if I wanted to just buy like 5 digital copies and project it so that my fourth and fifth grade choir can just learn it all together?
In this scenario, it's something that I think is going to be one of the recurring themes of this discussion. Anytime that you are taking an action in order to avoid the purchase of a published piece of copyrighted sheet music, that should be a red flag to you. Generally, that's not going to be something that you should do. If, again, you're in a time crunch, or if the projection is part of a special aspect of what you're teaching, and it's going to be a one-time usage like that, nobody's going to come after you for it. But again, if the basis for this action is to try to avoid purchasing the correct number of parts, that would be frowned upon.
Great. Awesome. So we got a yes, and a no. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to hit a new topic here of when it applies. So we kind of got a little to that in the last one. So I was an elementary school music teacher, and I had a fourth and fifth grade choir. And sometimes toward the end of the year, you're looking at that budget line and you're like, I don't know if I have enough money for that accompaniment CD. So I have 3 options here. Can that teacher, A, play the piano part live, B, pre-record themselves playing it on the piano or keyboard, however that might be, and C, make their own backing track in GarageBand?
Okay. Here, once again, we're seeing this scenario where it's an action that seems to be in avoidance of the purchase of the official published piece. In this case, a component of the choral arrangement. One might argue that if you have the budget to purchase 40 copies of the octavo for your choir, but not the recording, whether that be in a CD or a streaming audio format, then you really don't have the budget to purchase the octavo either. Certainly, play the piano part live is always an option, and in my opinion, the best option. When we talk about option B here, pre-record themselves playing it. Again, if the real motivation for that is to avoid the purchase of the CD, I would say that would be a no. If you're going to make a very simple recording of yourself performing the piano accompaniment because maybe that helps you conduct during rehearsals or do some other type of teaching activity rather than playing the piano, we're getting to a gray area here. I don't think anybody's going to come after you for that. But also we have to keep in mind here that, anytime you're going to do a performance that's going to be any type of formal contest, adjudication, anything like that, you need to prove that you have purchased the official sheet music and all components with it. So that you should be keeping that in mind. And in terms of scenario C, once we're getting into the area of a sophisticated backing track that's specifically supposed to mimic the official accompaniment CD, I think we're firmly in no territory here. I think really B and C are no territory here.
Gotcha. Nice. All right. How about if it's not me, but if I have a young student performer who is enthusiastic about wanting to accompany the school choir, but needs a little bit of adjustment to be able to play the accompaniment. And so, can I like simplify the accompaniment so that a student can accompany my choir?
Yeah, a simplified accompaniment could come in a couple of different forms. It could be that you can, put the existing piano part in front of them and tell them to you know edit in their playing in a certain way based upon the part that you already have there. That's a possibility. If you're going to create a whole new simplified version and write that out separately, technically that is something that requires permission for a copyrighted piece of music. That is also something that Alfred fields requests for on a regular basis, whether it be a piano accompaniment for a choir or an individual instrument piece in a concert band arrangement, or a jazz ensemble, any of those types of scenarios. And we do those on a gratis basis. And again, we resolve those quickly and easily. So you should not hesitate to do that. Again, you don't want to find yourself in a position where maybe you've done this on kind of an ad hoc basis without asking anybody about it, and then you need to go perform, somewhere formal where you need to have an official legal piece of sheet music. So I would suggest you do that up front.
Awesome. So in a really similar way, on the band side, and in North Carolina, we've changed our structure so that we can have novice players joining us in high school. And so I think a lot of our ensemble teachers are going to find more new students in their classrooms. And so if we have an arrangement that's maybe a grade 2 arrangement, but I have a brand new student, can I rewrite or simplify the trumpet 3 part for this new student to be able to play notes that they already know?
Yeah, you definitely can do that. Again, if it's going to be something where you are writing out a completely new part that's separate from the purchased piece of sheet music, technically you should get permission.
Awesome. So permission. All right. Now, we're gonna kind of pivot from the present standards idea more towards the arrangement. So, if our class is already playing somebody else's arrangement of Simple Gifts, it's a published source, like bought it from Alfred. And then as an extension, sort of like as this unit, we decide to have students create their own 2 part arrangement of the very first verse. What do we like? Do we need a license to have students create or perform their arrangements?
All right, this is a good one. This is a little more complex. Um, Simple Gifts, of course, is, one of the most well-known melodies in history, and it's in the public domain. And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of sheet music that have been published based upon this music. What you have to be attuned to is whether or not the piece of sheet music that you're beginning with reflects the original public domain work, or does it reflect an arrangement of the original public domain work, which would be covered under copyright. If you have an edition, there are certain publishers. There's an imprint that Alfred owns actually called Calmus, which is kind of famous for publishing the original versions of pieces of music, many of which are in the public domain. And you can rely that, that version of it, which, maybe a dozen different publishers might have sheet music featuring that version of the original public domain piece, that you can use that to create your own new arrangement without permission for the original public domain work, the original melody and harmony that goes along with it.
So
However, if you're looking at an arrangement of that you know, um, bears a copyright notice that indicates that this is a new copyrighted arrangement, then you would need permission, just like for a copyrighted original work.
Awesome. So as long as the students go back to the original urtext and the original public domain and are arranging off of that instead of arranging off of the arrangement, we
That's
should be in
right.
pretty good
That's
shape.
right. And often a copyrighted arrangement is going to have unique features to it that distinguish it from other copyrighted arrangements. And if you feel like you're encountering that, that would be a good indication that you're not working from the original public domain source.
Awesome. Great. All right. So we are going to go into why we should get permission. So actually, James, I'm just going to let you give us a large scale answer of why should we bother to get permission?
Well, again, the legal and moral motivations are really the main reasons why. I believe we're going to get into some of the possible consequences of not doing so, and those.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
but as we discussed at the beginning, it is the law. It's something that principles we want to try and stand by and teach our young people, and it's the morally and ethically correct thing to do.
Yeah. I like to think too about the fact that we often are educating the next wave of composers, right, in our classrooms. And so if we want to model, the ways that they will be compensated in the future, like we should be compensating today's composers similarly. So yeah. All right. So let's imagine that we have an a cappella group. I know this happens. They create original pop song, or sorry, original arrangements of pop songs every semester. We know there's a whole TV show where this happens. Students create, rehearse, perform, and they post their recordings online. So what happens if we don't get them a license or permission to perform these songs?
Okay. Before we get into the performance aspect, I think the first and overreaching principle here is something that I want to focus on, and that is the creation of the arrangement itself. One of the number one misconceptions that I encounter in the course of my work is the misunderstanding about the creation of arrangements of copyrighted works. The law is very clear that in order to create any type of arrangement, adaptation, derivative work, whatever label you want to put on it, of a copyrighted song, piece of music, you need permission of the original copyright owner. And in securing that permission, it will very likely involve a formal license and a fee, and it will very likely involve terms of that license that make clear that the arrangement you are creating is owned by the copyright owner of the original work. That principle is one of the most misunderstood things that we encounter. To secure that permission, that's part of the agreement, and no publisher is going to grant copyright ownership on a simple arrangement. There's a link that I sent to Brandon on the website of the Music Publishers Association. I sit on the board of directors of the MPA, which is the oldest music trade association in the United States, and it's comprised of music publishers who are directly involved in some way in the sheet music business. And at that link at the bottom for the Copyright Resource Center, there's one article there called Creating and Licensing and Distributing Authorized Orchestral Arrangements This was part of a plenary session I sat in on last year at the MOLA convention, the Major Orchestra Librarians annual meeting, where we talked about the fact that there are a lot of um, unlicensed, illegal orchestrations of film music being distributed. We were trying to educate the librarians of these professional orchestras how to be careful and protect themselves from uh, uh, using one of these unlicensed pieces. And in that article, it cites actually the actual sections within the code of the Copyright Act that addresses this principle that you need permission to create an arrangement, and that arrangement will be owned by the original copyright owner.
Awesome. Cool. So let's
Now,
pop back to this.
yeah.
Yeah.
What could happen if I don't get a license or permission? Legal action could happen. That would be an extreme case. Generally, whenever Alfred encounters an unlicensed arrangement, our mandate is generally that we want to get that arrangement licensed. So we'll go through the process of doing a proper license. And for any activity that occurred prior to that, um, there may be some type of release for that, but also there may be some type of penalty, some additional fee that would be involved in that case. Again, the idea that a school or a community band or someone would be subject to legal action for this type of thing is rare. It's not unprecedented, but rare. Um, and creating and performing and publicly performing an unlicensed copyrighted arrangement is a liability.
Yeah. We don't need to add extra costs to our budgets.
Sure,
All
sure.
right.
And in terms of that, custom arrangement licensing, whether it be for marching bands or show choirs, Alfred in any given month issues hundreds of those licenses. And we are known throughout the educational community for being very reasonable in terms of our fees, very quick in terms of the processing time, and very happy to help with any questions. It's our job, especially when it comes to copyrights for which we're an administrator. For example, we represent this the sheet music rights for Warner Brothers Studios. So think Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Batman. Also Warner Chappell music. So Cole Porter, Lerner and Lowe, Led Zeppelin, Green Day. And it's our job to try and promote and foster as much usage of that music as we possibly can. And so it's in our best interest to help you license custom arrangements wherever we possibly can. It's not something that's guaranteed. There are scenarios where we have to get approvals from the songwriters and composers for certain types of arrangements. But again, it's something that we routinely do hundreds of times a month, and you should not hesitate to reach out to us to make sure that your arrangements are properly licensed.
So don't be afraid of the process.
Not at all.
Awesome. All right. Well, sometimes as music teachers, we are not in charge of programming. So we have a talent show example here. The talent show is coming up. A student wants to perform a popular song using a karaoke track that they found on YouTube. The student asks if that's okay. What does the teacher say? How do they model that ethical action?
Okay. In this case, I really think the policy of YouTube is going to define whether that's permissible. Within YouTube's terms of service, there should be a very clear statement about the parameters that you can use the video content, the music content that appears there. And there may be allowances within that allow for certain types of usage in a nonprofit educational situation like this. And
Awesome.
so, is that okay? Yes, it's possible it is, but in terms of the legal principle, it really should be determined by looking at YouTube's terms of service or whatever. You could have a karaoke machine that's been purchased, and the student wants to use the karaoke machine. Along with that purchase of that piece of equipment, should have some guidelines for how it can be used. Most likely, in a nonprofit scenario, it's going to be okay to use.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So now we've run up on how do we actually get these permissions? Where do we find all of this information? I know most of us are familiar with the idea that at the bottom of our sheet music, it says copyright, this company, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it doesn't just say Hal Leonard or Alfred or something like that. So how in the world do we figure it out?
Yeah, it can be complicated. Back in the day, when the tradition was that, Cole Porter would write a song, he would write the words and the music, and there would be one publisher. It was very easy to determine, who you needed to go talk to get a license for that piece of music. Nowadays, between sampling and mashups and writer credit for producers, I've seen songs where there are 45 credited writers and 20 something publishers. And to try and clear those rights can be daunting. Um, but I think there's a few principles you can keep in mind that can help you get through it. Generally, if you're looking at a piece of sheet music and it you can tell that it was published by Alfred or Hal Leonard or another well-known publisher, you can start with them. Certainly, if you send a licensing inquiry to Alfred for a song and it turns out we don't have the rights to be able to license that to you, we will do everything we can to try and refer you to the proper publisher who can tell you that. Also, among the links that I sent to Brandon to share with all of you, there are links to the performing rights organizations in the United States, namely ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and GMR, which generally represent the performing rights, the public performance rights for all of the songs that are published in the United States. And you can go on there and search the song title and also an artist name or a songwriter name, and that can generally render you with the names of the publishers and in some cases their contact information. That can lead you in the right direction. But I would say start with the sheet music publishers. There's a smaller number of them for one thing, and they're going to be more savvy to knowing for a certain catalog like Sony or Universal or Warner Chappell, who's the best party to go to license sheet music rights for reproduction of sheet music or the creation of a custom arrangement. It may be that publisher directly, and it may be a print administrator like Alfred or Hal Leonard.
Great. So here's an example. I know you all administer her catalog. So the pep band wants to arrange a 30-second stand tune of Roar to play at Friday night's football game. I'm short on time. Where do I go? How do I do this?
Okay. Roar is a tune that has multiple songwriters and multiple publishers involved. If you were to go to the website of ASCAP and look this up, Roar by Katy Perry, you could see who some of them are. Alfred represents, I believe it's a 15% share of this song that we can license on behalf of Warner Chappell Music. And were you to send an inquiry to us to license this song, we could license our share for you, and we could refer you to the proper parties who can license the other interests.
Awesome. Great. All right, we have one more scenario. Let's say that we have an art showcase. Usually, music teachers get roped into running sound for these sorts of things. So, there's a teacher who wants students to dance to a popular 1950s song. So, can the teacher simply stream this from Amazon Music or Spotify or whatever the current streaming system is, into the auditorium?
Yeah, I think the legal principle here is similar to the YouTube example a few slides back. Those streaming services very likely have uh, definitions of usage that's allowed in their terms of service. I know that generally, people don't read the terms of service on those platforms, but that's where you would go if you want to, if you technically want to make sure that you're clear here. Um, I don't think any of those services are going to be hanging out in the foyer checking out your performance and coming after you for it. But from a technical legal standpoint, that's where you would be able to determine that
Awesome. Read the
answer.
fine print. Great. Well, not fine print, kind of macro print. Can you talk a little bit about the misconceptions around fair use?
That's right. Yeah. Um, Along with the custom arrangements issue, fair use is another very misunderstood and misinterpreted concept. And we can even see this um, in the legal actions that are happening between the major publishers and major record labels and all of the new AI companies who are claiming fair use. Um, and in my opinion, doing so in a way that is taking advantage of the ambiguity of it. Um, there is no real hard, fast principle that you can determine that something is fair use. There are a set of factors that weigh in favor of it. There are a set of factors that weigh against it. In every situation, you must consider all of those factors and make a determination based upon the relative weight between them. And so it's very hard to say, oh, that's definitely fair use. That's a very difficult thing. You could say that definitely weighs in opposition of fair use. On these bullet points, what's the purpose of your use? Examples of that favoring fair use would be teaching, research, scholarship, news reporting, and examples of purpose opposing fair use would be commercial activity. If you're profiting from that use, um, then that would weigh pretty heavily against it. Um, the nature of the original work, favoring fair use if it's a published work or factual or nonfiction based, and opposing fair use would be an unpublished work or a highly creative work of fiction. The amount of the work used, uh, the smaller the quantity of the work that's used, would favor fair use. If you're using a significant portion or the entire work, that would weigh pretty heavily against it. Or if you're utilizing the central theme and concept. I think I saw a fair use argument regarding the usage of a Ramones song a few years back. And if you're familiar with the Ramones, they only know three chords. So if you use those three chords, then you pretty much, you know, uh, uh, you know, in the opposing fair use area. Is satire considered fair use? I think satire uh, weighs weighs on the side of favoring fair use, um, but again, you would need to have a specific example to look at all the factors involved to see if any factors opposing fair use would be coming into play.
Yeah, I recently read something about parodies that said the parody has to be utilizing portion, like referencing the original work in a way that's creating a new message. Otherwise, if it's just a truncation, then it's just an abridged version or something like that. It has to have something that's uh new, basically. And that's that purpose and how much of it, I think, are part of that.
Right.
And to Chris's point, that's actually part of the accomplished objective there is to take a look at parody, satire, AI, those sorts of things.
All right. All right. And
Awesome.
now the last point here, does your use affect the market for the original? I think that in the teaching setting, this goes back to the earlier concept we talked about. If you're taking an action in order to avoid buying a piece of legal sheet music, that definitely affects the market of the original. Another example would be on this, if you're making a copy that's intended to be distributed to people, um, that would preclude them from needing to buy the original sheet music. You know that you know that would weigh against fair use. An example of that would be, there's a lot of pirate sheet music websites out there that have service providers set up in Kazakhstan or South America, which their sole purpose is to try and distribute sheet music and sell advertising that they're not going to clear licensing or pay royalties for. Again, that weighs against fair use pretty heavily. Um, the principles I always try to keep in mind in terms of fair use and trying to make sure that your usage weighs heavily on the side of fair use is always credit the composer, author, creator. Always limit the amount of the work that you're using. The smaller, the better. Always uh, um, limit the distribution. Uh, if it's only in your classroom on a one-time basis, that would weigh heavily for fair use. If you're going to put it up on a website for anybody to see, uh, uh, that's going to weigh against that. And again, at the end, um, any kind of commercial activity or activity that's going to preclude you or anybody else from having to purchase legal sheet music or accompaniment CDs is going to weigh against it. So avoid that.
Awesome. So it's not just because it's school, it's fair.
That's right. I've heard that phrase more than once. Well, I'm a teacher, and this is for a school, so that's got to be fair use. That's not a principle that you can rely on. And again, think about all the factors that weigh in favor of it and all those that weigh against it, before you can make that determination on any specific usage.
That's right. Our composers have to feed their families too and pay their mortgages. So absolutely. Great. Well, thank you. That's wonderful. We're gonna move towards our closing here. As James mentioned, these are the more resources. I've popped them up on the slide a few times, but they're right here on slide 26. James, did you have anything else you wanted to add about these resources?
No, you know, if you go to these links and fish around, I think you can learn a lot pretty quick. That Music Publishers Association Resource Center has a number of different um, articles and topics that are discussed, that cover some of the same things we've talked about here. And part of the mission of that organization is education and uh, trying to spread the word about all of these concepts as wide as we possibly can. And if anybody has any specific questions for me that they want to route through Brandon, I'll be happy to try and tackle those if you want to send me an email.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Sure,
All
my
right.
pleasure.
So We're gonna loop back to these six concepts. We actually did touch on all six of them in our scenarios. So as you are reflecting in your journal, our final kind of closing activity here is a keep, stop, and start. I will tell you that after having several conversations now with James, I would stop doing some things that I did as an educator, and I would start doing some new things as an educator. And so I think this is a an important learning journey for all of us. And so the first keep question is, what's one practice that you are already doing that aligns to these copyright and ethical arranging ideas? You can feel free to share that in the chat if you'd like. Um, Stop. What is one habit you may or you now realize you may need to adjust? I won't say you have to share that in the chat. That's fine to be private. And then our last question is starting. What is new one step or a new tool? I think I said that wrong. One new step or one new tool that you learned about today that will make your classroom's arrangements and performances a little more legal and a little more ethical. So we'll give you a minute to write those in your reflection journals and feel free to drop those into the chat as well. And if you have a question you'd like us to field in the last 5 minutes, you can drop that into the chat as well. As you are working, this recording will be archived in our PD catalog, and the slide deck will be made available there as well as the reflection journal, and you can access the CEU survey. At the bottom of your reflection journal is the link to the survey. So you can submit just your URL of the reflection journal. Please make sure that others can view your reflection journal as you submit it. And we will continue to archive this whole series, but we hope to see you at our future sessions as well. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and you hopefully we'll see you guys at our next session in this series. Thank you so much, James, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.